بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope everybody is doing well today. So last week we actually ended up just cancelling the lecture since I think the majority of the attendants were away. But today, so if you did not show up last week, then you did not actually miss out on anything. So today we're actually just picking up from where we had left off 2 weeks ago, inshallah. And a couple of weeks ago, we had just wrapped up the Battle of Uhud. We talked about some of the lessons as well and how it is applicable in our lives and whatnot. So now, before we move on to the next major event, we have to, as usual, discuss what are some of the events that took place between the Battle of Uhud up to the next major event. And in fact, there are several incidents that took place right after the Battle of Uhud, very shortly after, because of the Battle of Uhud. And that's inshallah what we're going to be talking about this lecture and in the upcoming lectures as well, inshallah. Now, just a disclaimer, today's lecture is going to be a slightly shorter than usual, just because going through some stuff and just barely had time to prepare for today's lecture, just to be completely transparent with you. So khairan inshallah. If you were to open the book of Seerah at this point, this is where the author Ibn Hisham in his book of Seerah, just like he did with the Battle of Badr, he's going to do the same thing now with the Battle of Uhud, where he does kind of a break from the Seerah and he goes into an in-depth tafsir of Surah Ali Imran. Because of course we mentioned Surah Ali Imran is the surah which is primarily associated with the Battle of Uhud, the events that took place in the Battle of Uhud. Not all of it in its entirety, but maybe around halfway through, all the way close to the very end. Most of it has to do with the incidents of the Battle of Uhud, whether we're talking about the hypocrites or whether we are talking about the Muslims or what happened in the battlefield or whether it's for the Prophet ﷺ himself. So there are many verses that we find in Surah Ali Imran, some of which we'll just quickly gloss over today. I wish we could turn this into an in-depth tafsir of Surah Ali Imran. It's honestly very fun to go and read these tafsir and these, and I honestly encourage you to do this as a homework, go and read the translation of Surah Ali Imran, and you will find that a lot of the verses, they have a backstory and a context, and they're all pretty much coming from the Battle of Uhud. So you will find pretty much the first verse in Surah Ali Imran that begins to talk about the Battle of Uhud. The verse كما أخرجك وإذ لا إله إلا الله وإذ I just had it in my head والله 5 seconds ago. As soon as the brother walked in, the verse left my head. وإذ I'll remember it later. تبوئ المؤمنين مقاعد للقتال. This is a portion of the verse. والله سميع عليم. So anyways, Allah. This is now really bothering me. Anyways, let me just move on to this. You will find verses about the initial victory of the Muslims, for example, in the Battle of Badr. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, we covered these verses before. وإذ حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولقد صدقكم الله وعده إذ تحسونهم بإذنه. That Allah Azza wa Jal has fulfilled His promise to you. He has spoken the truth when you were initially victorious against them. تحسونهم بإذنه, by Allah's permission. But then Allah proceeds to talk about the reason that caused their defeat. حتى إذا فشلتم وتنازعتم في الأمر وعصيتم من بعد ما أراكم ما تحبون. 3 reasons which we discussed in a lot of details. فشلتم, you guys disunited. تنازعتم في الأمر, you began bickering amongst each other. وعصيتم, and you disobeyed the command of the Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم. من بعد ما أراكم ما تحبون, after you saw that which your eyes liked. Meaning they're talking about the spoils of war. Okay. Allah proceeds to talk about the situation of the Muslims, admonishing them for running away and leaving their Prophet behind. إِذْ تُصْعِدُونَ وَلَا تَلْوُونَ عَلَىٰ أَحَدٍ وَالرَّسُولُ يَدْعُوكُمْ فِي أُخْرَاكُمْ. That you are You're running away, you're climbing up in every single direction, running, fleeing for your lives, when the Rasul is right there behind you, the man whom you're supposed to protect and you fight for, and he is calling you, and he is the only one who's standing behind you. So Allah Azza wa Jal mentions this in the surah. Of that verses, which is honestly so deep and worth to be reflected on, the verse where Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ أَفَإِنْ مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلَ انقلبتم على أعقابكم. That Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and by the way, the word Muhammad, for those of you who don't know, is only mentioned 4 times in the Quran. And one of them is right now here in Surah Al Imran. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is just a prophet, just like all the prophets that came before him. Now that you hear that he gets killed or that he's dead, are you going to flip on Allah? Now khalas, like this is of course referencing the rumor that the Muslims had heard when in the battle, when they heard that the Rasul was killed. And we mentioned how some of them, they lost their motivation, they lost their morale, they dropped their weapons, they said, what's the point of living anymore? What's the point of anything? Khalas, the Prophet is dead, it's all over. Allah is admonishing them here. Is that it? If Muhammad dies, is that it for you? You're just going to flip on Allah? وَمَنْ يَنْقَلِبْ عَلَىٰ عَقِبَيْهِ فَلَنْ يَضُرَّ اللَّهَ شَيْئًا. If you choose to flip on Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah, you should not harm Allah in any kind of way. You're only harming yourself. You're not harming Allah in any way whatsoever. So this is a lesson today that is worth to be reflected upon, and keep it in your mind. The ultimate goal is Allah, not a certain individual, not a certain sheikh, not a certain prophet, not a certain imam, not an individual. Yes, we might respect, we might look up to a certain individual, but if this person is gone, is that it for you? Does it end all there? Khalas, your worship of that's the extent of your relationship with Allah. وَمَنْ يَنْقَلِبْ عَلَىٰ عَقِبَيْهِ فَلَنْ يَضُرَّ اللَّهَ شَيْئًا. Whoever flips on Allah, he shall not harm Allah in any way. Of the verses which Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in Surah Al Imran, very relevant to what is happening in today's world, Allah Azza wa Jal tells us, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Do not falter, and do not give up, and do not grieve when you shall have the upper hand, if you are true believers. And this is what we need to underline 100 times today. People ask you about the Muslim Ummah today, and they ask you about Gaza, and they tell you what's happening to the Ummah, how come we're not victorious? Well, the one condition which is mentioned in the ayah, unfortunately, is not being met by the greater Ummah, right? In kuntum mu'minin. If you are true believers in Allah, then don't give up. Don't falter. Don't let this bring you down. Don't let this. And Allah Azza wa Jalla is referencing here the defeat of the Battle of Uhud, the loss that the Muslims were feeling, and the demoralization that they were feeling. Allah is telling them, it's not over. Don't just give up or falter just because this happened. And Allah moves on to continue. إِيَمْسَسْكُمْ قَرْحٌ فَقَدْ مَسَّ الْقَوْمَ قَرْحٌ مِثْلُهُ. That if you are being afflicted with a qarh, with a wound, with pain, if you are being inflicted with pain, then verily also فَقَدْ مَسَّ الْقَوْمَ قَرْحٌ مِثْلُهُ. They are also feeling a pain. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامِ. And subhanAllah, today, this is another verse that should be really reflected upon in light of what's happening in the world. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. It is the time, victory and defeat is in the hands of Allah Azza wa Jal. And Allah sometimes gives you the victory and sometimes makes you taste defeat. It's not going to be always victory. I mean, we talked about this last class. Victory is not handed to you on a silver platter. Just because you're a Muslim and I pray 5 times a day and I'm a good Muslim, that does not mean that my life is going to go well. That does not mean that I shall be successful in everything. Sometimes you shall taste success, but you shall also taste defeat. And all of it is a wisdom from Allah Azza wa Jal. It's all a wisdom. I might not understand why. Today I might look at Gaza, I might not understand why. And I'm not going to pretend to be a saint or a know-it-all here. I don't know. I cannot explain to you what's happening in Gaza today. Why does Allah not choose right then and right here and now to bring down the help and bring down the aid and the victory to the people of Gaza when it is so clear that they are being oppressed and they are being starved and they are being mistreated. So why? I don't know. I don't have the answer. But I trust Allah Azza wa Jal. وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ, so that Allah is testing you to see who is the believer. وَيَتَّخِذَ مِنْكُمْ شُهَدَاءَ. And one of the wisdoms of sometimes being granted defeat, is that a group of people is granted shahada. People in Gaza today who are dying, they are dying as shuhada. They are dying as the highest status possible. And we mentioned this before in the explanation in some of the ayahs. If they had the opportunity after their death, they would choose to come back to life and experience the same misery that they are right now. The same bombshells on top of their head, the same oppression. They would want to experience it again after tasting the reward of being martyred. وَيَتَّخِذَ مِنْكُمْ شُهَدَاءَ. Of the advices, or rather of the verses that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the Quran, and this time is towards the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in terms of his treatment to other people. And this is something, keep it in your heart when you interact with anyone in your life. Now, if we reflect over the Battle of Uhud, the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has every right to go and scold the archers, or scold the Muslims who went and abandoned their weapons and to take the war away. He has every right. Nobody can deny this. He can round them all up and say, how dare you disobey my command? How dare you do this? Didn't I not tell you so and so and so? Yet, you will not find a single narration where he is blaming anybody or that he is admonishing anyone. And Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَظًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. Ya Rasulullah, treat them with mercy. Forgive them. فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. Forgive them. Ask Allah to forgive them. وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. And learn from your mistakes. Talk to them about it. But no admonishing. Why? Because if you are someone who is harsh towards the people in front of you, you're going to make them go away from you. And take this as a rule, ya akhi. No matter what position you hold, no matter who you are, no matter anything that you do, bear in mind, it's much easier. Think of this in your day-to-day lives. It's much easier for you to remember the painful times with someone than it is the happy times. You might have happy times, you have experienced good times with someone for 20 years, but as soon as that one incident happens where this person really hurt you with a word that you were not expecting to hear, or treated you in a manner that really disgraced you and brought you down. Yes, you might choose to forgive and forget, or rather you can choose to forgive, but it's difficult to forget, right? There's always going to be that scar, and you're going to keep that distance. So subhanAllah, this is being said to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam when he has every single right, again, to admonish the Muslims for what they have done. But this is the wisdom that is being taught to us over here. We also learn, of course, in the Surah of Ali Imran, the fate of the shuhada. We mentioned this, of course. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. We mentioned the incident according to some of the Mufassirun. They say that the souls of the shuhada of Uhud, from the amount of enjoyment that they were enjoying after their death, they went to Allah and they asked for permission. Ya Allah, who is going to tell the believers who are still alive about how much we're enjoying the afterlife? How much we're enjoying the blessings and bounty and the rewards that you are giving us after our death. And as a result, Allah Azza wa Jal reveals these verses. Do not think that these people who are being killed today, or that you see them on the news, don't think they are dead. They are alive as we speak. Not alive in the sense that you are nigh and alive. They are currently alive up there with Allah Azza wa Jal. And they are so happy. فَرِحِينَ بِمَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. They are enjoying the bounties. In the hadith they mentioned they are inhabiting the bodies of small green birds and they are flying around the throne of Allah Azza wa Jal, underneath the throne of Allah Azza wa Jal. And they're eating from the fruits of Jannah. And so they would ask for no more than this. وَيَسْتَبْشِرُونَ بِالَّذِينَ لَمْ يَلْحَقُوا. And they are giving glad tidings to the believers who have not yet joined them. You have nothing to worry about either. So this is the fate of the martyrs. We also mentioned certain verses that is related to the Ghazwa of Hamra al-Asad, which took place right after the Battle of Uhud. Remember the group that the Rasul took? الذين استجابوا لله والرسول من بعد ما أصابهم القرح. That Allah Azza wa Jalla is praising a certain group of believers that responded to the call of Allah and His Messenger ﷺ, even though they were themselves afflicted. And this is, of course, we mentioned the army of the Ghazwat Hamra al-Asad took place, they were consisted of warriors that fought in the Battle of Uhud. And so they were afflicted, they were still suffering from the Battle of Uhud, yet they still responded to the call. And Allah Azza wa Jalla also mentions in terms of the hypocrites, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَلَا يَحْزُنْكَ الَّذِينَ يُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْكُفْرِ. Don't let this group of people that are rushing towards kufr, don't let them bring you down. إِنَّهُمْ لَن يَضُرُّوا اللَّهَ شَيْئًا. They're not going to harm you, or they're not going to harm Allah in any way possible. Whether they are there or not, that their presence does not make any difference. So Allah Azza wa Jalla is calming the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, don't feel down because of what the munafiqun had done at the start of the battle. And last but not least, the ultimate wisdom of the Battle of Uhud. ما كان الله ليذر المؤمنين على ما أنتم عليه حتى يميز الخبيث من الطيب. Allah shall not leave you in the state that you are currently in until He distinguishes the pure from the filthy. And we mentioned, of course, in terms of the context, it makes a difference. The pure from the filthy in the context of the Battle of Badr is believer and is mu'min and kafir. In the Battle of Uhud, mu'min and munafiq. So now they are being filtered from within them, from inside them. So this is just a little bit of snippets from the surah Al Imran. Once again, I encourage you to actually go and read these verses for yourself, their translation, and a lot of it will make a lot of sense. Now, one of the negative outcomes of the Battle of Uhud, besides the fact that Muslims got killed, was the fact also that the fear or the reputation that the Muslims had built for themselves as being fearsome warriors dwindled down. That was shattered by a lot of the tribes around Medina. Okay? That all of a sudden, basically, they saw that, oh, look, even the Muslims can be defeated. Even Muhammad ﷺ can be defeated. Even the Ansar, the Aus and the Khazraj, they can get defeated as well. And this caused all sorts of problems for the Muslims. And this is, of course, what we're going to be discussing within the next couple of lectures, inshallah. It caused them all sorts of problems because a lot of tribes now felt brave enough to challenge the Muslims. And so a lot of the following incidents, you will find they have a similar pattern. Usually surrounding tribes which are surrounding Medina, they all of a sudden feel confident enough to gather an army and to plan an attack against Medina. And it would just be back and forth. The Rasul would retaliate and he would attack them, or sometimes the Muslims themselves would be ambushed. And worst of all, the next Jewish tribe is also another issue that's going to come up, and we're going to be discussing it. The tribe of Banu Nadir. And this is in addition to all of the internal conflicts that is taking place in Medina. You have now the hypocrites whom are like clear as day and night, and as we mentioned, the Jewish people as well. So many of the Bedouin tribes who were enemies of Islam, they declared war. So of them, for example, was the incident of the tribes of Qarra and Ubal, also the tribe of Banu Asad, and also the incident of Bi'r Ma'una, and the incident of the Bi'r of Ar-Raji. So some of these incidents turned out to be very tragic incidents for the Muslims. Even right after the disaster of Uhud, as if this was not enough, it was followed up with another major disaster. But as we mentioned, everything happens for a wisdom, and this is what we're going to discuss in detail. So the first incident which is mentioned to us after the Battle of Uhud is the incident of a tribe called Banu Asad ibn Khuzaymah. Banu Asad ibn Khuzaymah. This was taking place in early Muharram of the 4th year. Early Muharram of the 4th year. So now it's been around 3 months or so. Remember the Uhud took place in 3rd year, the month of Shawwal. So now Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, and now Muharram. And most likely why the reason that nothing happened in Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah is because it was time for the Hajj season. Okay, and many tribes were not in the mood to fight, I guess. But in Muharram, now it's a different story. Right? So in the early Muharram, we don't really have an exact date, Banu Khuzayma conspired to attack Medina. And you're going to notice from this point on, the animosity against Islam is starting to increase. It's no longer just an issue between Quraysh and the Muslims. No. Now this is becoming more general, and it's literally becoming Islam versus Kufr. So, however, the Medina, they also had, you can say, their FBI, their CIA, their Secret Service, okay? And this was in the form of scouts that would be in the desert. Okay, so Rasul Sallallahu he would send a certain Sahaba to scout the area and scout nearby tribes to see what's going on. So this is what I mean when I say FBI. So I'm just going to say FBI to make my life a little bit easier, inshallah. So the FBI of Medina, they took a whiff of the plans that Banu Asad was planning. And so the Rasul ﷺ launched an attack against Banu Asad before the Banu Asad could act. And so he sent a Sariyah. And remember, when you hear Sariyah, it means the Rasul ﷺ was not present. It means he assigned someone to be the leader of this expedition while he himself stayed in Medina. So he sent a Sariyah consisting most likely of up to 150 men and led by Abu Salama radiallahu anhu, Abu Salama. And we don't really have any details about the Sariyah other than the fact that they attacked the Banu Asad and they took them by complete surprise. And so the Banu Asad, they fled their own homes, and the Muslims basically got a free victory. And they captured a bunch of camels and sheep and as spoils of war. And remember, animals back in the day, that's pretty expensive stuff. Okay, like you're not talking about you're not talking about a farm. Okay, you're talking about a car. Okay, a camel is very, very expensive. So they captured a whole bunch of camels and sheep, and they returned safely back to Medina without any casualties, except that the leader of the Sariyah, Abu Salama, he shortly passed away after this took place, not because of the Sariyah itself, rather because it appears that he received a wound in the Battle of Uhud, and the injury finally got to him and got the better of him, and so he lost his life. Now, interestingly though, even though, like I said, this is the end of this incident, what's interesting though about the incident of the tribe of Banu Asad is it actually set the stage of an incident that would take place many, many, many years later after the death of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and that is the emergence of a man called Tulayha al-Asadi. Tulayha al-Asadi. Tulayha al-Asadi, he is the leader of the tribe of Banu Asad. And he was an enemy of Islam. And so when the Muslims attacked like this and they captured, his hatred for Islam increased even more. So what did he decide to do as a result of his hatred? He declared himself to be a prophet after the death of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He wanted to deceive people, and so he came out to the people and he pretended he was a false prophet basically, and he misled people who were around him. And so this incident here was one of his incentives for doing this. So this was Tulayha al-Asadi. And of course, there is the hadith of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that he himself says, and this is an authentic hadith, that after me, he says, after me, there shall come 30 Dajjals. All of them are liars, and all of them claim that they are a prophet. So it's an interesting hadith where the Rasul, oddly enough, he gives us a specific number. He tells us that there are 30 people who are Dajjals. Now, how does that make any sense? Isn't Dajjal the major signs and whatnot, and what is all this? That is the Dajjal with capital T and capital D. The Dajjal is the Dajjal of the major signs. Okay, but there are other Dajjals that have come in the past, and the sign of them being a Dajjal is them declaring themselves to be a prophet. Anyone who declares himself, goes out to the public and says, I am a prophet, he immediately falls into the category of this Dajjal. And Dajjal is someone, linguistically speaking, by the way, is someone who paints a picture to trick people, basically. Okay, it's coming from the verb Dajjala, Dajjal. Okay, So he takes something and he paints over it, and he gives a false representation to the people who look at this painting of his. So anyhow, this was Tulayha al-Asadi. Another incident took place in the same month of Muharram, most likely even in parallel. And this took place in the 5th day of Muharram. And once again, basically, the FBI in Medina, they got a whiff that a man by the name of Khalid ibn Sufyan al-Hudhali. Al-Hudhali means he's coming from the tribe of Hudayl. The tribe of Hudayl is another Bedouin tribe. It's a little bit of a larger Bedouin tribe. And they were also plotting an attack against Medina. And so the Rasul ﷺ, just like he did with the previous tribe, he decides to attack them and to mess up their plan before they can attack. But this time he did not send an army, rather he sent one man. It was a secret, undercover one-man assassination mission, basically. Okay, instead of sending an entire army, and perhaps it's because they want to avoid as many casualties as possible. So Allahu alam, maybe because it was easier to get rid of this issue altogether by simply assassinating the mastermind. So the Rasul ﷺ, he himself personally assigns Abdullah ibn Unais. Abdullah ibn Unais, he was assigned for this job. And Abdullah ibn Unais radiallahu anhu, he himself narrates this. The hadith is found in narrated by Imam Ahmad. So he says, دعاني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم called me one day. فقال إنه قد بلغني أن ابن سفيان بن نبيح الهذلي يجمع للناس ليغزوني وهو بنخلة أو بعرنة فأته فاقتله. So he basically told him the story that I have heard the news that there is this man called Khalid ibn Sufyan. He is preparing an army against me and he wants to attack me. So he's either stationed in Nakhla or in Arana. Okay, both of which they're close to each other. So go and find him and go and kill him. No, easier said than done. Just walk in and go and kill the leader. So the man says, Abdullah bin Umays, he says, Ya Rasulullah, in'athu li hatta a'rifah. Can you describe him for me so I can recognize him when I see him? So the Rasul ﷺ, he says, إِنَّكَ إِذَا رَأَيْتَهُ أَذْكَرَكَ الشَّيْطَانِ. He said, enough said. When you see him, you'll remember shaitan. Like he's so, subhanAllah, he has, subhanAllah, how some people just have the face of a villain. I guess this man had the face of a villain. Like you'll see him, he's just going to look like such an evil man. He's going to remind you of shaitan. وآية ما بينك وبينه أنك إذا رأيته وجدت له قشعريرة. And of the signs that this is truly the man that you are after is when you see him, he's literally going to send chills down your spine. Just his appearance by himself. So it's some quite the good-looking villain, I guess. So Abdullah bin Unais, he says, you know what, khalas. So he sets out. And he says, I went there and I saw him around the Asr time. And I saw some ladies around him. So clearly he's not a good man. And I felt exactly like the Rasul ﷺ said, I felt the chills running down my spine. So فمشيت, I walked towards him. And he was nervous. فلما انتهيت إليه قال من الرجل. So I went and I stopped next to him. And so he looked at me and he says, who are you? So he says, رجل من العرب. I'm just a random guy from the desert, basically. سمع بك وبمجمعك لهذا الرجل فجاءك لذلك. So, I'm just a random guy coming from the desert. I heard that you wanted to attack that man, meaning the Rasul ﷺ. So I want to join you. So subhanAllah, maybe because of this guy's, I guess when you're really excited about a certain plan, you become a little bit naive and you let your guard down. So he says, you know what? Sure. Basically, why not? So he says basically that فَمَشِيتُ مَعَهُ شَيْئًا حَتَّى إِذَا أَمْكَنَنِي. So I continued walking with him. I pretended to be his buddy, his friend, I continued walking with him until I found the perfect time. حَتَّى إِذَا أَمْكَنَنِي حَمَلْتُ عَلَيْهِ بِالسَّيْفِ فَقَتَلْتُهَا. So I took my sword when he was not paying attention and I killed him. And he even took his head as a proof for the Rasul ﷺ that he killed the man. فلما قدمت على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فرآني. So then I returned back to Medina, and the Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم saw me. So he says, أفلح الوجه. That he says to me, before I even said anything, you look like you have the face of someone who is successful, in your mission. So he says, قد قتلته يا رسول الله. I have killed him, يا رسول الله. ثم قام بي. So he said to him, he made him dua, he made for him dua and all that stuff. Then he told him, come with me. فأدخلني بيته. So he brought me into his house. فأعطاني عصا. He gave me a stick, a cane. He gave me a cane. فقال أمسك هذه العصا عندك. Take this cane is yours from this day on. So Abdullah bin Unais, he takes a stick, he says, Jazakallah khairan, and he walks out. So it appears he reconnected back with his buddies in Medina. So they asked him for, what happened, where were you, what took place, whatever. And he told him the story. He said, the Rasul gave me the stick. So they said, what's the stick for? He says, Allah, I don't know. He just gave me the stick, so I took the stick. SubhanAllah, this was always the attitude of the Sahaba. The Rasul gives you something, you take it, no need to question anything, and khalas, you walk. You don't say like, oh, what am I going to do with the stick? Where's the cash money, right? Where's the dollars? So SubhanAllah. And so they said to him, why don't you go back to Rasul and ask him, what's the stick all about? Why did he give you a stick? So he goes back to him and he says, Ya Rasulullah, lima a'taytani hadha al-'asa? Why did you give me this stick? So then he says, Ayatun bayni wa baynaka yawm al-qiyamah. This stick, this cane of yours, shall be a sign that I recognize you with on the day of judgment. Meaning, you're going to come at the day of judgment with the stick in your hand. And out of every single human being, I'm going to recognize you, O Abdullah, because of the stick that's in your hand. And so, subhanAllah, Abdullah got so happy because of this. So, from that day on, basically, the books mentioned that he never ever left the stick from his side. He would go with it, he would walk out with it, he would go to war with it, he would sleep with it, I don't know if he sleeps with it, but he just keeps it with him at all times, to the point that even when he passed away, they said that this stick cannot possibly be passed down to anyone. So they buried that stick with him in that grave. So, subhanAllah, it was an honor that was given to Abdullah ibn Umar. Something of value in this world, but definitely something of great value in the next world. Another incident that took place in the month, this time we're in the month of Safar, 4th year of the Hijrah, month of Safar. And inshallah, with this incident, we'll wrap up today's lecture. And this was, Allahu A'lam, it seems best to say that this was a revenge done by the tribe of Hudayl. Abdullah bin Unais, he just assassinated the leader of the Banu Hudayl. So now the Banu Hudayl want to do a tactic to get the revenge back. And so Ibn Ishaq, he tells us, قدم على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بعد أحد رهط من عضل وقارة. Two tribes. One of them is called Udal and the other is called Qarra. And they came as a delegation to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And they said, Ya Rasulullah, inna fina Islama. So they went to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and it was a very dirty tactic. They said, Ya Rasulullah, there are parts of our tribe that have accepted Islam. فَبَعَثْ مَعَنَا نَفَرًا مِنْ أَصْحَابِكَ. So why don't you send a group of your Sahaba to our tribes? يُفَقِّهُونَنَا فِي الدِّينِ. So they can teach us the religion in Islam. وَيُقْرِئُونَنَا الْقُرْآنِ. So and they can make us recite the Quran and learn the Quran. وَيُعَلِّمُونَنَا الشَّرَائِعَ. And so that we can learn what is halal and what is haram and what we are supposed to do. So, فبعث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نفرا ستة من أصحابه. So the Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم, unfortunately, he did not suspect anything at the time, so he sent 6 of the Sahaba to go to the tribes of Udal and Qarra, and to go there as teachers. To go there, they're supposed to teach them Quran, teach them Islam, teach them the religion. And he made the leader a man by the name of Asim ibn Thabit. Asim ibn Thabit. So they went with him. They went with the 6 of the Sahaba. They went with the tribes of Udal and Qarra. حتى إذا كانوا على الرجيع. And so they took them to a well that is called the well of Ar-Raji', a well of water. The well of Ar-Raji is the main well of the tribe of Hudayl. But of course, the Muslims were not suspecting anything. But غَدَرُوا بِهِمْ. As soon as they lured them to the water well, they backstabbed them. And so they were ambushed. And so they were, out of nowhere, they were being attacked by a large group of men from every single direction, attacking the 6 people. So basically, this whole incident was a setup. It was a setup as a form of revenge. We're going to get the Sahaba to come here, and then we're going to attack them, and we're going to kill them. So the Muslims, we are told, at the end of the day, there are 6 people fighting against a large group of people. So they made their way to a small hill that was close to the well, and they pulled out their bows and arrows, and they fought to the best of their abilities. They shot their arrows until they had no more arrows. They fought with their swords until they could no longer fight with their swords. But again, there's only so much that 6 people can do. And eventually, they were surrounded. And on top of this, Asim ibn Thabit, the leader of these 6 people, he had a target on his head that he was not aware of. They were purposely targeting Asim ibn Thabit, and they succeeded in killing him. Why? What was the story of Asim ibn Thabit? So Ibn Ishaq tells us, فَلَمَّا قُتِلَ عَاصِم, when he was killed, أَرَادَتْ هُذَيْلْ أَخْذَ رَأْسِهِ, they wanted to take his head for a reason. لِيَبِيعُوهُ مِنْ سُلَافَةِ ibn Sa'd, so they can hand over his head to a lady by the name of Sulafa bint Sa'd. So pause here. Who is Sulafa bint Sa'd, and why do they want to hand the head of Asim ibn Thabit to Sulafa bint Sa'd? Asim ibn Thabit, he had killed the husband of Sulafa bint Sa'd during the Battle of Uhud. And Sulafa, she's a pagan. And she was a rich pagan woman, I guess. So she made a promise, and she announced a bounty that she was going to drink. She made a promise that she was going to drink khamr, wine, from the skull of Asim ibn Thabit. So it's very messed up, right? But that was her way of getting revenge, that I'm going to drink my khamr with the skull of the man who killed my husband. And so she basically announced that anyone who brings me the skull of Asim, I shall gift him 100 camels. Big, massive prize. So now they have their eyes on Asim. And they killed him. They succeeded in killing him. But when they went to grab his head, فَمَنَعَتْهُمُ الدُّبُرُ, that as soon as they approached his body, out of nowhere a swarm of wasps came. And they surrounded the body of Asim ibn Thabit. And anyone who came close, they would get stung by the wasps. And so the body of Asim ibn Thabit was being protected. And Ibn Ishaq tells us that Asim ibn Thabit, he had made a vow to Allah. He had made a promise to Allah in his life, when he was still alive, that he will never touch the skin of a disbeliever, nor shall he ever allow the skin of a mushrik, a disbeliever, to touch him as well. That I'm never going to touch the skin of a disbeliever. And it seems that he honored this promise for his entire life, and he did it for the sake of Allah. And so Allah honored his end of the promise after the death of Asim ibn Thabit, by protecting him even after his death. So when they فلما حالت بينه وبينهم, when they saw the wasps were getting between them, قالوا دعوه يمسي فتذهبون. Let's just camp here. Let's wait till night, because at night, after Maghrib, right, all the insects, they go away. So all the wasps will just go back to their own nest. So we'll just wait till night came. And subhanAllah, the next phrase is very interesting, and I will even translate it as it says, فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ الْوَادِي فَاحْتَمَلَ عَاصِمًا فَذَهَبَ بِهِ, which literally translates to, at night, when the nightfall came and they wanted to take a body of water came. Like a river came out of nowhere, it swallowed the body of Asim, and it went away. SubhanAllah. So this is clearly a miracle, and there's no other way to explain this. And it was an honor of Asim ibn Thabit. And so to this day, nobody knows where Asim ibn Thabit is buried, but he was protected by Allah Azza wa Jalla, and they were not able to get their hands on the skull. And so Asim ibn Thabit, along with 2 others, were killed. 3 of them were still there. And he mentions, Ibn Ishaq continues, وأما زيد بن الدثنة or زيد بن طارق وخبيب or sorry زيد بن الدثنة and خبيب بن عدي and Abdullah bin Tariq. So these three people فلانوا ورقوا ورغبوا في الحياة. They were surrounded and they realized that we are not going to be able to overpower this army. And so they decided to surrender. And the army gave them the promise, the enemies, they gave them the promise. If you surrender, if you give up, if you just let go of your weapons, we're not going to do anything to you. We promise we're just not going to do anything to you. And so they took their words for it and they abandoned their weapons. And so as soon as they abandoned their weapons, they jumped at them and they tied them up with tight ropes. And so he said, like, you guys said you're not going to do anything to us, and now you're tying up like this. So Abdullah ibn Tariq, he got angry, and he says that this is the first sign of betrayal, that they don't actually mean what they say. They don't mean to protect us. They don't mean to give us safety. They are just tying us up. So he threw a tantrum, basically, and he refused to be a prisoner of war. They would tell him to go and walk. He would refuse to walk. They would tell him to do this. They would not do. He would not listen to them. He refused any command, and so they killed him. As for the other two, for Khubayb ibn Adi and Zayd ibn Dathina, they were sold. They were sold as prisoners to their respective tribes because their own tribes wanted to execute them, basically. So Khubayb was sold to the tribe of Banu Harith because he had killed one of the people from Banu Harith in the Battle of Badr. And so and he was, Allahu A'lam, also among the men who had killed Umayyah ibn Khalaf in the Battle of Badr. Surrounded, remember how Bilal ibn Rabah along with a few of the Ansar surrounded Umayyah ibn Khalaf and they killed him. It appears he was one of them as well. So Safwan ibn Umayyah, he had a personal grudge against him. And so he made sure Safwan ibn Umayyah, his wealthy man, he purchased him. And he wanted to execute him. And of course he did get executed. But there is an incident that is mentioned that Abu Sufyan, when he was brought to Quraysh, basically, and he was tied up, Abu Sufyan tells him, "Anshuduka Allahu ya Zayd," that I ask you by Allah, O Zayd, أتحب أن محمدا عندنا الآن في مكانك نضرب عنقه وأنك في أهلك. So he said, I ask you by Allah, O Zayd, at this moment while you are tied up, knowing that you're going to be executed in a few minutes, wouldn't you have preferred that you were in the safety of your own home, with your family, with your wife, with your children? And the man that is being tied up in front of me right now would be the Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam instead of you. So the man responds to him, والله ما أحب أن محمدا الآن في مكانه. That he says basically, Wallahi, there is nothing more beloved to me than the fact that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is right now in the place where he is at right now, meaning he's back home in Medina, تصيبه شوكة تؤذيه, and he is not even being pricked by a thorn. So subhanallah, they were saying, he's basically saying, I would rather give my life away than having the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam even getting pricked by a thorn. And so Abu Sufyan, he would be amazed at this, and he says, I have never seen the amount of love. I've never seen a group of people that show such an amount of love towards anyone like the amount of love that the companions of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam would show the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That this was something inhuman. This is something, nothing can give you this kind of love unless you are a believer in something, unless there's a merit behind what it is that you're believing in, right? And of course, this turned out later to be the reason why Abu Sufyan, many years later in the future, he would accept Islam. And he would say, like, how come? How are the Muslims this many? How is the matter of this man this big? And he would say that, and then he would be told that this is the risala. This is what it means to be this is prophethood. It's not just a genius or someone like this. This is what it means to be a prophet. So, but he was, of course, executed. Khubayb, he remained a prisoner among the tribe of Banu Harith. And they basically set a time and a day to execute him. Okay? And so they left him in a prison cell, you can say, until the day of his execution. So when it was the time for his execution, he asked to basically, he made a request that he wants to clean himself. that he wants to, shave his, hair, and he wants to meet Allah in a clean state, right? And so they gave him this request, and as he was, cleaning himself with this razor, it is mentioned in a report that one of the babies of Quraysh crawled to him into the cell somehow. And so the mother saw this from a distance and she screamed in terror that basically my baby has crawled away from me and now he's in the hands of this prisoner who has basically a knife in his hand. So now she's scared, like, oh, he knows this man, he knows he's going to die in a few minutes. What if he basically decides to, let me take out as many of them as I can before I pass up, before they kill me, right? So he could have killed this baby. So she screamed in a lot of fear. And so Zayd basically just looks at her in in a form of disgust, honestly. And he basically says, like, "Are you afraid that I'm gonna like? Do you think in your right mind that I'm gonna go and kill this child over here? I would. There's no way that I would do such a thing." And so of course, he lets the baby go and crawl back towards his mother. And there are even reports that mention that they would see him eating grapes in his prison cell, and the reports would say there were no grapes in Mecca at the time. Mecca is in a desert. Grapes don't grow in Mecca, and obviously, they have a prisoner. They're not gonna give their prisoners luxury of eating grapes in Mecca. Yet they say we saw him eating grapes. When he was brought up to be killed, he asked for permission that before you execute me, allow me to pray 2 rak'at before you kill me. So they gave him that, and so he prayed 2 quick rak'at. And then he commented after, and he says, were it not for the fact that you guys would think that I'm a coward, like I'm not going to make my salah really, really long so that you guys don't think that I'm a coward. But had I had the ability to do so, I would have made longer 2 rak'at, and then he was executed after this. So this is why it's such a sad incident that all the 6 Sahabi, they were betrayed in such a manner. But we do learn some lessons from Khubayb here. We learn, who just got executed. He is actually, the books of Seerah mentioned, he was the first to establish the sunnah of praying 2 rak'at before execution. So I hope nobody here ever finds himself in a situation where you're going to get executed. But if you whatever happens in your life, just keep it in the back of your head. It is a sunnah before a person gets executed. So 2 rak'ahs of sunnah before execution. And of the lessons also that we learn from the incident of Ar-Raji is clearly here we get to see different types of Sahaba that display different kinds of behavior. There are some Sahaba that chose to fight to the death, and there are some Sahaba that chose to surrender. And both of them were okay. It was permissible for both of these to do what they did. For the person who, like Asad ibn Thabit, who died and fought, and he refused to let anybody have his body and whatnot, and he fought to his death, his martyrdom was accepted. And for the man who surrendered and then refused to obey the commands of his captives, he was also accepted as a shaheed. And as for the man who gave in to the demands and they were later executed, they were also accepted. So in such situations, it depends on the individual circumstance, but everybody has a share of the reward. So basically, it's not suicide. Okay, what I'm saying is it's not suicide. If someone finds himself, and inshallah Allah will protect all of us, if someone finds himself captured by the enemy, and they see out of this capturing an opportunity for shahada, you know what, I'm not going to listen to anything they say, I'm not going to do anything they tell me to do, then this is actually also permissible, and it does not count as suicide. Okay, and also we get to see from the incident of Khubayb the concept of mini miracles. So this is a concept called al-karamat, karama. Karamat is something, obviously today the miracles of the prophets they no longer take place, but every individual can still experience something that is called karamat, which you can say the best way to really say this is like super natural, maybe perhaps incidents that may take place in a person's life that come in a form of a blessing, of course, right? They're usually good incidents. So, like for example, of a karamat that a person might have is to see the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in their dream, like and to see him as he is, as like he actually is, because the shaitan cannot take the form of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a dream. So, if anyone sees the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a dream, then he has truly seen him in a dream. So, this is for an example of a karama. But in here, we get to see, for example, this is a normal Sahabi, he's not a prophet, and he got some grapes because of a deed that he had done. So, subhanAllah, you sometimes hear stories from certain people, certain righteous people, or shuyukh, or imams, or righteous people, and they tell you personal things that may have happened to them. And last but not least, we again learn from Khubayb here that it's never the attitude of a Muslim to take out as many as they can, innocent people, before they actually go and die. So, يعني whether we have to see here, like he did not kill this child. So we do not kill women or children or innocent civilians just out of grudge towards a government or towards a certain group of people before a person knows that they're gonna die. Okay, like, oh, let me take as many of them, like suicide bombing, for example. Like this doesn't work that way. Okay, so we learn all of this, and subhanallah, it's ironic how they label Islam as to be this barbaric religion, but this is when you read into Islam and into the Seerah, you get to see the true colors of Islam. So anyhow, for today, we're just going to stop here, inshallah. There are more incidents to be mentioned. Next one is going to be a little bit of a longer incident. And this was probably the most tragic incident that took place in the entire Seerah, actually. Um, the biggest tragedy in the entire Seerah that took place, and this was the tragedy of the incident of Bi'r Ma'una. Bi'r Ma'una, the well of Ma'una. And so we will talk this, we'll start next class by discussing this. And inshallah, it will lead up to also the Jewish tribes and what was happening on their end as well, inshallah ta'ala. So with that said, I'm going to pause here for today. Are there any questions before we wrap up? Yes. Laughing at what, sorry? Yeah. No, no. So no. So now the Quran does mention very explicitly. At the same time, it's good that you mention this because it's also a serious matter at the end of the day, right? Now we're just laughing because it is funny. We can't imagine, يعني, like sunnah of execution. Subhanallah, we laugh because it doesn't even cross our mind. Like Subhanallah, what kind of people are they that they think of praying 2 rakats? Like what I'm thinking of, if someone's going to execute me in 10 minutes, I'm thinking, oh, what about my family? What about this and what about that? And what's going to happen to me? And am I going to feel pain? I'm going to this and that. And the only thing that's on his mind is, can you let me pray 2 rakats of sunnah? So subhanallah, and it just shows you how they are. So we're not laughing because that we're making fun of them and we're like making a mockery out of them. If a person, however, is doing so out of mockery, any kind of sunnah, then this falls within the realm of kufr. This is very dangerous. Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions in Surah At-Tawbah, um, وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُم. This is an incident, inshallah, we'll talk about in Tabuk. وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُم لَيَقُولُنَّ إِنَّمَا كُنَّا نَخُوضُ وَنَلْعَبُ. When you ask them, why are you making fun of this? They will tell you, oh, we're just playing around. We're just joking, having fun. We're just, making banter. And Allah Azza wa Jalla responds very sternly, قُلْ أَبِاللَّهِ وَآيَاتِهِ وَرَسُولِهِ كُنْتُمْ تَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. Are you making fun of Allah and His Messenger and the verses of Allah? لَا تَعْتَذِرُوا. Don't even apologize. قَدْ كَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ. You have committed kufr after you had iman in you. So, why do we say that? Inshallah, nobody here has done any kufr. Nobody here is close to doing any kufr, so please do not let shaitan come to your head. But at the same time, remember that it is also a very serious issue to make any joking around, especially when it comes to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so there's a million other things that you can joke about. Don't make a joke of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Other questions? No questions? Hold on, inshallah. Is that the adhan? MashaAllah. Okay, so perfect timing. Okay, so inshallah for next week, the timing still works for you, 7:30? Because the that time is kind of cutting closer. Should we just leave it at 7:30 for now? And actually, I was thinking of this idea. If everybody here is okay with it and you want to continuously attend the Seerah, I was thinking of making a WhatsApp group maybe. That way we can communicate all together and we can just maybe you missed a few classes and you don't know whether to get rescheduled or not rescheduled, because as you can see they unfortunately they don't really do a good job at announcing the correct times and whatnot. So I think it's better for us if we can just make a WhatsApp group, inshallah. So if you are okay with this, then inshallah, once I go grab my phone, I we can just quickly take each other's numbers, or I'll take your numbers actually, and then inshallah maybe today or tomorrow I'll make a group chat, and you can also add those who usually come and they're not here today. بإذن الله عز وجل. Does that sound okay with everybody here, inshallah? Okay.